This is Taylor Sparks of the RaleighDurhamMo.com, where we feature small business owners and entrepreneurs to bring you hints, tips, insights, and perspectives on what it takes to be successful. Joining us today is John Miles, the CEO and Chief of What's Next at Integritive, a web development and e-marketing firm located in Asheville, North Carolina. Integritive also made the 2011 World Blues list of most democratic places to work. John, thank you for taking the time to speak with Mo.com.
Oh, well, thank you for the invite, Taylor. I'm delighted to be on.
Wonderful. So let's get started here. John, I read that this is your 10th year in business. Congratulations on your milestone. 10 years ago, the web or either web marketing was not nearly as big as it is today. What made you decide to start this type of company?
It's a great question. I studied chemistry and humanistic psychology in college, so that pretty much makes perfect sense how I ended up in the internet. And I guess in the late 90s, there was a lot of activity there, and found just sort of a hidden passion and hidden talents in that regard. And in our general market, there seemed to be a opportunity to get in the game and see how things would fly.
Okay, wonderful. Were there some events in your previous work history or any circumstance that made you combine the words interactive and integrity to name your business?
Yes, it was interesting too. We were looking for an available domain name, and the idea of interactive and integrity and integrative. The early days of the web, as you probably remember, there was quite a few people on the technology side, and quite a few people on the design side, and quite a few people on the marketing side. But there hadn't been a lot of impetus to really bring all those under one roof, and for a firm to really play synergistically in an integrative way. So that was the initial vision, was how do we get the best players on the field under the same roof, and in the same regard return phone calls and do what we promise, and have some fun along the way.
That sounds really good. That's a wonderful concept. So all companies have a particular culture, environment, and values, but yours is on your website for all to see. Why was it important to let everyone, whether it's clients, future employees, or even visitors, know that this is the type of company that they're going to be dealing with?
Yeah, I think it was important to me from the get-go, just because there were a number of, right out of college, there were a number of work opportunities that I had that didn't necessarily fit my personal values or the kind of culture that I wanted to be a part of. So, and we've all had that experience where we've walked into a particular restaurant or retail outlet, and they get us or they don't get us.
That's right.
And I wanted to be explicit about that, both for hiring purposes, to attract similar-minded people that were looking for this sort of flex time, values-driven culture, and in the same regard, become an attractor pattern for new business development, and also a repelling pattern as well. So, if people read the values or they read about us and our culture, and they, don't really match up with it, it's preferable for us that they find another agency to work with. So that, much like there's companies that hang their hat on this thing or that thing, we really wanted to be explicit so that we were kind of attracting the folks that we wanted to play with, and kind of repelling the folks that maybe wouldn't be a good fit for us.
Excellent. So speaking of values, everyone brings their own set of values to a company. How are you able to align the company's values with those of like the new employee? How do you make sure that they all mesh, if you will?
It's a great question. I think in the early days, as we were still defining what we held near and dear to us in terms of our values and our culture, it was much more collaborative. I mean, with the first employee and the second and third employee, there were still a lot of discussions about, what was, going to be really, really important to us, and what were the priorities of those important values. But as the company's grown and there's been a trajectory that's been established, and a culture that we want to really preserve, we've moved into the mode of sort of interviewing for those values and figuring out if people are a good fit. Do they value fun in the workplace? Do they value family and flex time? Are they here to be craftsmen, or are they here to assemble? There's subtle distinctions between those things, but
Yes.
when people read the website and they apply, and then we have these conversations through the interview process, both with our core team, and then I'm kind of the cultural ambassador here to make sure everything, everybody's playing well together. It becomes apparent whether they're a fit or not, and we don't always get it right, but the batting average is pretty good.
Great. So, in the beginning, when you first started your business 10 years ago, how many roles did you have to take on to get the business up and running?
Well, it was funny. I didn't take the CEO position until about 3 or 4 years ago, even though I was the owner, but I definitely felt like the chief everything officer in there, because I was responsible for sales and marketing and for design and for programming. And I mean, it's a completely unfunded company. So, basically getting a business license and hanging a banner in a spare bedroom is how it started. And I think a lot of web developers start in that capacity because it is such a low capital business to get started. But then as the business grew, I read a really influential book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth. And it really alerted me to the difference between being a technician and being a business owner. And those two distinctions, you can be one or the other, but it's hard to be both because there's only 40 hours in the work week to juggle. So I slowly started being deliberate about taking off hats, and also choosing to take off hats where I could find people that were better than me in core areas, as opposed to people that I could manage, or say, hey, I could continue to have say in this. I really wanted to have less say rather than more say. And you can only really do that by hiring the most talented people in your region.
That's right. Yes, that was an excellent book. I also read that book. So during this early days, and as you started to take off the hats, if you will, was there ever a time, or even a time or two, that you thought about quitting?
It's funny to think about the word quitting, and I really reflect back and say, okay, in 10 years, has there ever been a time where I've wanted to throw in the towel? Mm-hmm. And I can safely say that there hasn't been, but there have been some frustrations about, maybe not being to a milestone quick enough, which is essentially just expectations and some of my, maybe attachment personality. And those frustrations generally peaked in rich conversations with friends and colleagues about, what are we missing here? And I think those explorations have been really, really valuable to help us, continue our growth trajectory. But at no time have I said, I'm done. I've certainly taken time off to reflect and revisit our vision and see what's next as chief of what's next. But I love this. I mean, this is what gets me out of bed in the morning, both my family and my business, and I want to be here. It's been a great journey and continues to be so.
Fabulous. So how long was it before the company was profitable?
Day one.
Great.
It's I think it's one of those things. It was a very interesting trajectory when I started talking to attorney and CPA and some advisors that I wanted to start a organically funded, self-funded enterprise. They all said I was crazy. You'll grow faster, you'll make more money, all these other things if you find investors and make a lot of fireworks. But I think for me, this business continues to be a bit of a bonsai tree, where it's planted from seed and it's carefully nurtured and it grows somewhat organically. And I think that allows us to have the kind of company that we want to have, rather than have to keep up with, the trajectory of meeting investors' needs or board of directors' needs or that sort of thing. There's nothing wrong with that business model. It's just, for us and what we were creating here, it just seemed that we wanted to have a bit more, not a bit more control, because it isn't like that. It's that we wanted to trust more in the process and kind of bootstrap and see if we could do it.
Yes.
I think there's, that same element when Sir Edmund Hillary was asked why he decided to climb Mount Everest, and it's because it's there, was his response. And, this challenge has been put before us by ourselves, and it continues to be a fulfilling journey.
This is great. So, what size companies do you and your team work with?
Well, I almost say all sizes.
Hmm.
We started doing small websites for mom and pops. That was sort of like the beginning seedlings of the internet and what was needed. And we've since been able to scale up both in terms of staff and capabilities to handle, major hospital systems, large tourist outlets. So we continue to be positioned where we want to help people grow their businesses. It isn't exclusively about being an elephant hunter or having a walk away point.
Hmm.
The thing that our team is really passionate about is, how can we communicate our clients' values on the internet, and how can we really help them thrive? So, we still work with a few mom and pops, and then, we scale up to projects over six figures for larger entities. And that is a lot like the game of Tetris, kind of keeping the blocks filled, with large stones and pebbles in sand, and it seems to work well for us.
Wow. So, tell me if you would just all the services that you provide for your clients.
It all starts with strategy. That's the
Hmm.
first bit, both digitally and offline. We added in April of 2010 a advertising division with some brand strategists that used to be doing much larger work, but we felt that there was a time at which the digital space and the offline space need to become increasingly integrated with social media and listening, as opposed to just broadcasting.
Okay.
And so pretty much anything in the advertising, marketing, and digital space we can do. So social media, website design, web application development, mobile, TV commercials, logos. Um, it's all under one roof, and it's all handled by people with specific expertise and proven success.
Okay. And so I read also that it's your aim to be balanced in all aspects of your life. What started you on this journey, and how has the balancing act been?
Continues to be a balancing act. I think any other CEO out there listening to this can relate to that. There's always push and pull of priorities. I think what started me on the path of seeking that balance was maybe two key influencers. One was a humanistic psychologist that I studied with in my last year in college, Edward Deci, just
Mhm.
talking about intrinsic motivation. And I really got into the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi with flow, and trying to integrate that experience, which was so easy playing basketball or mountaineering, into business or into family. And then the other thing is, I think my parents, they own businesses, and they would probably confess this, that they were perhaps a bit out of balance. And my
Hmm.
dad's finding that later in life, that love is a far more important priority than cash flow.
Yes.
And wanting to come to that realization earlier, rather than in retirement or near retirement, to say, wow, look at all those years that went by, to have those joyful experiences with family, and to work a sane work week, and to really give everything you got in the moment, but not get out of balance in any regard. And it continues to be a challenge, because will do pretty well at business and pretty well at family, and then I'll find my physical being maybe a little neglected, and it's back to the gym, or that sort
Yes.
of thing. So.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're down to our what I call our final five, which is the five semi-random questions, if you will. Number one, what is your proudest personal achievement?
Oh gosh, proudest personal achievement. I can't even really call an achievement, but it happens so naturally. It's just my family. I've got two wonderful kids and a loving wife, and that really brings a lot of joy to my life, and reminds me of what's important. And I think maybe on the business side is that, creating a work environment where people genuinely like to come to work. And it's not a utopia. We're constantly working at that and figuring out how to provide balance, or at least the habitat for happiness that people can thrive in this environment. But to come in and hear the banter and the laughter, and have people genuinely want to be here, I think is one of the crowning achievements of this business. And and it's been a co-creation, so I can't really take all the credit for it.
Okay. Title of last book read?
I'm nearly finished with it. Is The How of Happiness. And it's interesting because there's been a lot written on the concept of happiness, both in the workplace and home life. And this woman, who I forgot her name, sadly, but if you Google it, I'm sure you'll come up with a book.
Okay.
She's actually done the research, or compiled the research of, not just what people believe makes them happy, but statistically what are some of the hows of happiness. And the interesting thing the book says is that it requires effort.
Yes.
That happiness isn't just comfort. It isn't just handed to you. It's, really a practice. And there are key things and behaviors that people who are more happy tend to do over folks that are less happy. So
Good. And I will have to Google that. I'll look that one up. 3 non-family members you admire?
3 non-family members that I admire. I, I, I think dating back to the kind of basketball years and the coaching, Phil Jackson has always been a big inspiration to me. I've read a couple of his books and seen some of his speeches online, and just the way that he approaches the preparation of his teams and his seasons and himself is remarkable, and the results have definitely followed suit from that. There's a mindfulness and a compassion and a caring that goes way beyond wins and losses with him.
That's right.
And I definitely derive a lot of inspiration from him, and continue to. Bill George, another big influencer, I guess. He's former CEO of Medtronic and author of Authentic Leadership. He's also a longtime meditator and sort of focus on conscious capitalism, and I continue to follow his Twitter stream and read what I can. And the thing that's most impressive to me about him is not just that he grew his company in a prolific manner, but that there's a real sense of dedication to authenticity and the depth of actualizing that authenticity, and how important it is. His view is that there's a crisis in leadership right now, and that it can only be remedied by people stepping up and really getting in touch with what's happening inside. And being authentic with that. And the fact that he's taken a thought leadership position in his semi-retirement is really, really noble and impressive to me as well. And then, 3.
You can do it. One more.
I know. I think what comes to mind is Chris Anderson, CEO or head curator of the TED conferences. And, not just that the brand is so respected, but I think there's 2 components about Chris that really stand out. One is his intense generosity with the spread of ideas. Certainly he could have just kept the conference, but, he extended it out on the web to make it a lot more democratic and available, and then further extending it out into communities with TEDx, which they don't receive any remuneration for. So he's aligned with his vision and his core values of curiosity, spread of ideas in the world, and those ideas making a difference. And he walks that talk on a huge level. I think all 3 people, really put a vision that's so much larger than themselves, and then really trust in the process to achieve it.
That's right. I knew you could do 3. Dream vacation destination.
Oh gosh, I've already had some dream vacation destinations. So
Where are they?
Well, okay. Well, I took the kids to Disney World a couple years
Yay.
back, and that was
Mm.
fantastic. Been to the Caribbean a few times. I think still on my lingering list, if I had to pick future, I've always wanted to see Hawaii and
Okay.
go hiking and experience the waterfalls there and the black lava beaches. So uh,
Okay.
yeah.
That sounds nice. And lastly, if you weren't in the web marketing business, what career would you have?
Oh gosh. Dreamy wise, I'd love to be a professional athlete, but at age 27, those days are long behind me. Um, but in lieu of that, it would probably be coaching. Um,
Okay.
yeah, my brother is a lacrosse coach, and there's a lot of heartstrings that pull in that direction. I can't wait till my kids are old enough to, be on the sidelines and kind of providing some sort of wisdom if there is any.
Yes,
Regard.
yes.
But yeah, I think the profession of coaching has always really enamored me and interested me. From certainly Phil Jackson and the great UCLA coach John Wooden and many others. It's such a great way to develop self, but also to be a facilitator to other people's development.
This is true. This is true. Well, John, I have to thank you so much for spending the time today with Mo.com. And we look forward to your future success of you and your company.
Well, thank you, Taylor. You've been a delight to connect with this morning. And yeah, the questions got me thinking, and I hope what I shared is, valuable and benefit to other entrepreneurs out there. In closing, I think the only thing that I can say that can really drive success, one, which is having a clear vision, grounded in positive values, and then persistence.
Yes.
So many people, drill their well and are inches away from their gold. And I think the only separator really is the folks that just continue to drill. And sometimes that can be a personality flaw. Sometimes it can be a attribute. But in the same token, I think persistence really is kind of the bottom line to seeing your vision into fruition.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate that. Even on a very personal note, I appreciate that as well.
Thanks, Taylor.
All right.